All right. So welcome to the Real Dads Network. We're so honored to have you, Pat. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's such a sensitive, but yet a very important topic. And I would like, we meet every Thursday. We've been meeting for now over 3 years. Every Thursday, we haven't missed a Thursday. We started during the pandemic, and we're a strong group of brothers that get together to support, empower each other, and get information, share information. We have guest speakers. We try to have guest speakers every other week. So we're so glad to invite you into our space, as we would say, and with this important topic. I would like you, please, Pat, if you would just introduce yourself. I know you've been doing this for decades. I mean, congratulations on your book. Share about that. We want to hear all about that. And we look forward to a real engaging and informative conversation. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mike. Hello, Real Dads. How are you this evening?
Good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor. I'm Patricia Myers. I am a funeral director. I manage the McCall's Bronxwood Funeral Home. I'm an author. I just released my second book, which made Amazon #1 bestseller. And it's titled Your Exclusive End of Life Planning Guide. And I'm also a speaker. I do go out, I speak to various organizations, and I do workshop. This is my joy. What I'm doing here tonight is my joy. This is what I like doing. I like to help educate people and bring awareness to our community. And the end of life is a topic that no one wants to talk about. And when we raise the question about it, I mean, we get chills down our spine, our eyebrows rises, and we get to no, I don't want to talk about that subject. But as the flyer said, is that I want you to prepare privately to celebrate publicly. And the question is, how do you do something like that? By preparing privately, you leave a peaceful transition for your loved ones, and they can celebrate your legacy after all is done publicly. There are a lot of things that I see behind the walls of the funeral home what that family goes through that really saddens my heart. That's why I wrote the book that was just released. And I'm going to go through some of the challenges that family faces when that time comes. And I'm not going to bore you about death, because what I want you to do mainly is to get organized. I read a little bit about your organization, and I want to say kudos to you. You guys are doing a wonderful job in the community. But I want you to take it a step further. I want you to, because we get so busy in our hustle and bustle day to day, that sometimes we forget the important part or the important piece in our life, and that's our family. Not that we don't love them, it's sometimes we just don't put things in order for them before a crisis comes. It can be sickness, it can be anything. So what I want you to do tonight, I want you to listen to some of my high points, and I want you to take action to try to organize yourself before a crisis hit. The one thing that I discovered with the families that I've served is that we know very little about our loved ones. You can live with a person all your life, but there's information about them that you may not know. One question that triggers every time that I ask a family when they come is, can you tell me the name of your mother's maiden name? Give me your mother's maiden name. And it's like a question mark. And the answer that I get is like, I wasn't born then. I don't know what grandma's maiden name was, or we never discussed that. But is that a reason for not knowing? What we need to do as a family, as a community, is to sit down with our loved ones and have these open discussions. Get a little bit more family history, a little bit more family background, because believe it or not, that information follows you from birth to school, to employment, and then when it comes time to death. We need that information. You need that information. And it's a good time to sit down and write your life story, to discuss your life with your loved ones. That will be needed when it comes time to write your obituary. I don't like the word obituary so much, it's so traditional. I like your life story because that's exactly what it is. It's your story, and you need to share that with your family members. And that's a part of your legacy that you will leave behind when that time comes. In the book that I've written, I give you a step-by-step guide how to do this. It's a fun piece. It's a good around the table discussion with your family. And as real dads, if you want to leave your legacy, put that little girl on your lap or that son. And as you're talking to them, say, hey, you know, when I was in high school, I was the best basketball player ever. You know, my dad, he was a basketball player. And a lot of things that he shared with us, I did not know until we had that round table family discussion on Thanksgiving or Christmas. Those are some of the times that you can really talk to your family and get information about, the family can know more about you. So that's a very important piece as far as you sharing your life story with your loved ones, so they'll have something that they can document, or when they need to write your obituary, they have some meaningful information to do. I don't know if you've been to a funeral before and had seen an obituary, and sometimes it's so short. I mean, it's a very short obituary. And you say, this person has lived 60, 70, 80 plus years. This is all that they can pull together about this individual. I really think that it's more that they can pull together, but it's just that we don't dive in deeper by asking questions with our loved one or have that family gathering to find out more about what needs to be said. So in your group, Real Dads, hey, have that talk around your discussion table on Thursday evening. Get to know each other. I had a girlfriend of mine who I did not know this. I've known her for years. She told me, because I love sewing, okay? That's behind the scene. And she told me that she loves flying. She used to take pilot lessons. I was shocked. I mean, it knocked me off my feet. I was just shocked to hear that story. So I'm saying this to say to you, come together in your group, have these discussions around your family table and get a meaningful life story about you. Tell your family members about that. The other thing that you can do privately, and the challenges that I see family faces when they come into the funeral home, is the life insurance policy. Okay, most of us have life insurance policy mainly to take care of our family and final expenses. And some of the challenges that I see happen, the family faces, is that the life insurance policy sometimes have a beneficiary on it who has now deceased. And when that happens, you cannot use that policy because now you have to go to probate, you got to get someone named, you have to go to the entire state to try to figure out who you could put down, who's going to take this money over. And that's a big problem. I mean, you got like a 10, 20,000 or more policy in your hand, but the person never changed the beneficiary. So what I want you to do, if you have a life insurance policy, if you're planning to purchase a life insurance policy, make certain that your beneficiary is current on that policy. Another challenge that family faces with the life insurance policy, they have a minor name as the beneficiary. A minor cannot sign an agreement or a contract. So you may have a $50,000 life insurance policy for your little girl or boy, and you say this is for them. But the only money that your family have to bury you is from that insurance policy. So what happens? Your loved one comes in to make funeral arrangements. They expected to use that $50,000 policy to pay for a portion of your funeral costs. They cannot use it because you have the minor's name there as the beneficiary. So I often tell family this. I know how much we love our children and grandparents. If there are any grandparents out there, I know how you love that precious grandchild, and you want to give them something towards their education. But if that's all you have is that life insurance policy, you name an adult person, let them have at least maybe 25% of the proceeds, or maybe the amount of the monies that will cost, for the paying of the funeral expense. Let them take that portion out of the policy, and the remainder can be set aside for that child until he or she becomes 18 years of age. That's a big, big problem that I see family faces when they come in to make arrangements for their loved one. The other thing that you need to be aware of, if you work for a company, you're part of a union, and you have a life insurance benefit with them, beware that that policy or that benefit is only good as long as you're working for that company. Once you leave that company, there are no more life insurance benefits for you because you're no longer part of that company. So what I say to those people, fine, keep the insurance policy, the benefits that you're getting from your employer, but try to get a private insurance policy that would take care of your family if you ever leave that job. If you retire from the job, whatever benefits you get from the union, it's not going to be the 100% as if you were a full-time employee. It cuts maybe like 50% less. And the question here, would that be enough money for your loved one to carry on if something were to happen to you? If anybody have a divorce going on, please make certain, if you don't want your former spouse to have your money, make certain that you go back and you change those beneficiary paperwork. Check your life insurance paperwork annually. Make certain that your premiums are paid up, that you don't come in the funeral home with a policy that has been lapsed. I've seen that happen. Once the policy is lapsed, your funds are gone. You have nothing. And if you and the insurance company would tell you, oh, let's reinstate it. But when you reinstate it, you're starting all over from day one. You could have had the policy 10 years ago. They will have you to reinstate it without a physical, but you're starting off like day one now that you just, starting this policy. And again, a lot of times people don't know that. So that's point number 2 that I wanted to bring to you. The other concern that I want to, the other point that I want to bring to you is the cost of a funeral. Funeral is not something that somebody want to talk about day to day. It's not a topic that just comes up. But when death happens, you go to that funeral home, you have no idea what the cost of a funeral is because you never inquired about it. So when you go there and you find out that a funeral is costing you maybe $15,000, $17,000 because you don't have a grave, which is very costly today. And when you come in, you're like, where am I going to get this money? And you think all of that money can be taken from your life insurance policy. Sometimes and oftentimes it cannot. Why? Because when you come in, there's a 2-part division on your agreement with the funeral home. You have the funeral home portion, which takes care of the removal, the embalming, the preparation of you, programs, prayer cards. That's one part of the agreement. That might come out to maybe $7,000 or $8,000. Fine, if you have an insurance policy and your policy can cover that portion, we can take the money from the insurance policy. The second part of the agreement is what's called your cash advances. Your cash advances is the monies that we collect on your behalf for the cemetery, the death certificate, minister, organist, or burial permit. That can go up to maybe $10,000. Why? Because you have to purchase a grave. The least expensive grave in the New York vicinity would run you maybe about $8,000. So that $10,000, which would include maybe the cemetery fee, your death certificate, or what have you, the funeral home most often asks you to pay that amount of money. Why? Because when we go to the cemetery, they want that money up front. They will not wait until the insurance policy is paid out to the funeral home to pay them. Now, if you've ever been to a funeral, you've ever gone to a cemetery, and you see when that hearse stops at that little house as we pull into the gate, we're going into that house to take care of business. We're going into that house to give that cemetery representative the check for the grave that you just purchased and the burial permit. All business has to be taken care of before we can go to the grave. So I tell families, if you're just getting a brand new life insurance policy, try to still put some money aside so that if something happens within the 2 years of that insurance policy, you have something to lean on. Because even though you get a life insurance policy in the beginning, it's a 2-year incontestable period, which means that that insurance company have the right to investigate your medical background, your medical history, before they pay that policy in full to your loved one. So your agent would tell you, Mr. Smith, you're covered as day one, you're covered. You're covered, yes, you are covered. But if you die within that 2-year period, there's a possibility that the insurance company will not pay the full proceeds of what you purchased. So I just want you to understand like the process. I want you to preserve your legacy. I want you to have that communication with your loved ones so that they can understand what it is that you have and what you want them to obtain when the final stage comes. I remember a lady who I dealt with some time ago. We were talking and she told me, she said, Ms. Myers, I just don't want to burden my children about this. I don't want to put the burden on them. And she was an organized person. She kept all of her records. Everything was documented. But the fact that she didn't want to burden her children when she died, all the information that should have been shared with her children was not shared. Meaning the burden wound up going on her children because they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what mom had. And she had it hidden in her treasure boxes that only she knew where it was. She was the only one who had the key to that. And I don't want us to live a life of secrecy. I want us to be open to our loved ones, have discussions. If you have a policy, and I've seen this happen, if you have a life insurance policy, if you have a bank account, and you had sizable amounts of money there, and you knew that everything was in place, but life happened, a crisis came along, you may have gotten sick and could not keep up with that policy. You may have had a bank account, but you had to withdraw monies out of that bank account to take care of your family, put food on the table, whatever the reason might be. And where you were, you're no longer there. Trust somebody, talk to somebody, and let them know, listen, babe, I had it, but this came up, I don't have it now. If something were to happen to me, I don't want you to be shocked to know that I no longer have this life insurance policy, or I no longer have this amount of money in my bank account. I want to be open to you. And it's okay to start over, but just be honest with each other. Be truthful. And just let your spouse or your children or whomever know the real deal on what's going on. Life happened. Don't take it to heart. We can fix that. We can do it all over again, whatever it takes. But the sad thing about it is when someone walks in to take care of business, thinking that something is in place, and it's really not there. That is more heart-wrenching than anything else. And I see it day in, I see it day out. And I want to try to make a difference to our community, to help bring awareness to you, to make a difference within your family, within your community. This way you can sit quietly and prepare privately and celebrate publicly. I think that's all I have to say. I don't know if there's questions or.
You're muted, Mike.
Thank you so very, very much, Ms. Myers. This was very thought-provoking and informative. I do have a question for you. I noticed that your book is entitled Embracing Teardrops.
Yes.
Where did you get that title from? I just want to know, do you find that we don't embrace it, or are you going to, where did the title?
Well, the title came from really the work that I do. Families coming, I'm embracing family every day. Okay, and it's their teardrops that I'm embracing. So that's how I came up with the title. The first book, just to tell you a little bit about me, my first book, which is also, Embracing the Teardrop, but it's a simple step-by-step guide, how to plan a funeral before the time comes. And when I wrote that book, it came from my sickness. I was sick. I was diagnosed with cancer back in 2008. And God had laid upon my heart to write the book, to try to give a step-by-step guide to the people so they can understand the process before coming into a funeral home. And when I look around, you can't find this on Barnes and Noble. You can't find it in schools. You can't find it anywhere. And I thought, hey, let me just go ahead and do that. And then that's how it all came together. The family that I serve, I'm embracing them. There's always tears. So embracing the teardrops.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks so much for sharing. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I have a question. Ms. Myers, thank you for being here this evening as well. And thank you for sharing the information that you shared. A question that I have is, what's the difference between the trust and the will?
Okay. The will is the will is when you're dealing with, and I'm not an attorney, okay? I'm going to answer this the best that I know how, okay? Because I'm not an attorney, but your will is what you will put together as far as your assets and who you want to leave as your beneficiary, how you're going to distribute your assets. The trust, and don't quote me on this, like I said, I'm not an attorney, but your trust is, I'm not quite sure about the trust. I want to be honest with you. Okay, but I know the will is something that, what you would use to distribute your assets. That's all I can answer on that one.
Thank you.
I'm not.
And the reason why I ask, because sometimes when you talk about probate, and sometimes if you have a will, it can still go into probate in terms before you can actually receive your money.
Right.
But if the money is put in a trust, it's under the estate, and therefore you can still have access to that and avoid going through the whole probate process.
Again, you're probably right about that, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. But the end stage of life is more what I do.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Puma.
I have a question.
Puma and then Jonathan. Or Jerome. Hey, Puma, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Myers. Thanks for being on the call tonight. I really appreciate the information you shared. I have a question about, you said that the traditional funeral will cost around $17,000, right?
That's just wrong about.
My question is, for a person like me who's going to get cremated, how much money can I save with cremation? What stages are cut out with cremation?
Okay. For instance, our local cemetery, to get a grave there would run you about, say, $17,000. One of our local cemetery in the Bronx area. You would only have to pay, if we go to that same cemetery, just for the cemetery, $512. Okay? So if you're getting the burial ground, you're spending $17,000 for a burial ground. At the same cemetery, you can spend only $512 at that same cemetery to be cremated. And that does not include the funeral home charges.
Okay, so what would the funeral home charges be?
Well, again, that's up to you on your choices. Okay, I tell everybody, every funeral is different. You design the type of service that you want. Your neighbor down the street would probably pay maybe $10,000 for a funeral. You can come in and say, hey, I can do it for $5,000. It depends on what you want, what type of merchandise you get. Whether you want a wake the night before or wake the night before, service the next day. It depends on you, on your choice. So I never want to quote exactly what the cost is because it's up to the individual on what they want.
All right. I won't take too much time from the other brothers, but okay. So what I understand you're saying is that if I don't use a funeral home for services, I just get a cremation with no service at all. It's only $525.
No, what I'm saying, the cemetery, the local cemetery, they charge $512 for cremation.
Right.
You would need to use a funeral home for the cremation because the
Okay.
funeral home have to pick up the body, they have to,
Got it. Okay.
all of that. Everything has to be done,
I'm getting that clarity. So I'm in the saving money when I die. So you're paying for the two services. I bet you if you use it more than once, I guess wait for one day's a pay, then the next service next day. So it adds up. If I just have one service only, it's how I would save money, basically.
Exactly.
Got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. From Jerome? Jerome, you had a question or a comment? Jonathan?
Oh, you meant Jonathan?
Oh, Jonathan. Sorry, Jonathan.
Okay, not a problem. Thank you, Ms. Myers, for this wonderful presentation. It's ironic. I've been trying to have this end of life conversation with my mother probably for the past 5 years, and she's finally conceded to have the conversation. So I think what you outlined is critically important because when you mentioned earlier having the conversation about where you grew up and those kind of things, some of the older generation have been very silent. They don't wish to share a lot about their past. So it's not that we would be unable to, write a proper obituary. A lot of stuff to keep guarded along with the papers and the like. So I guess part of my question is, how do you bridge that gap? Not wanting to know all of your business, just so that we can properly prepare your send off without searching and looking in the dark.
Absolutely. What I would say to you, Jonathan, is you have to almost have like an informal type of discussion. If you're around, at your mom's house with your siblings or just her sisters, brother, whomever, just have some indirect, conversation with, like an informal conversation. Maybe, I don't know, you have an aunt or uncle or anyone else around her age that you can kind of talk to?
Well, unfortunately, she's the last surviving sibling. So, she's the last one. So no relatives to ask. And you also mentioned beneficiaries, because I think a good portion of the beneficiaries were her siblings who have passed on. So I'm definitely gonna go back and ask who's listed besides her children to make sure that everything is current. Thank goodness she had the foresight maybe 2 or 3 years ago when her sister died, that she already purchased her burial plot. So that part's squared away. We just have to plan a funeral, and as Derek Phillips mentioned, the assets and the will and the trust of those things. That's the remaining piece.
Right, and I think to try to get a little bit more information from your mom, like I said, do like an informal conversation with her, like, oh, Mom, what school did you say you go to? Or where did you work? Things like that, and make it kind of fun. If you go directly to her with that generation, like you said, they're a silent generation, they don't want to share information with you. They're very secretive. You can't go head on with them. You have to really be indirect and just say, what was that school or what town was it that you were born in? Bring it up like that. And I think if you do it that way, you'll be able to get a little bit more information. She can, she'll start talking.
Great. Thank you very much.
Jerome, and then Philip. You're muted, Jerome. Okay, go ahead. Oh, your sound is not working. We don't hear you, Jerome. Jerome, while you're working on that, I'll let Philip go and then we'll come back to you, Jerome.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, very well.
Perfect, perfect. Well, I wanted to say thank you, Pat, for this information. It is imperative, right? Because at this point, as you're growing in your legacy, you want to have things drawn out so there aren't those arguments, though there isn't that tear and divide throughout the family. I heard I'm a life insurance agent, so I heard a lot of things you touched on that. I wanted to touch on a couple things. There are always contingent beneficiaries. So you have your single beneficiaries, your primary, but there's also contingent. So make sure anyone on the call, if you have it, make sure you have contingent on there in case something like that does happen. Someone passes away, it can go to someone else. The children that you hit, that was perfect. I tell everyone they want to give their kids it, they can't touch it.
Right.
So make sure you have someone that you trust to do that. Do you guys at the funeral homes have like lawyers to help set up will and trust that you kind of do that with, or how does that work?
Well, no, we don't. We do
Okay.
it strictly with,
Particularly with the funeral and going with that. Okay. So I think that would be big. I'm just thinking because I don't have a partnership with someone like that yet. So I'm just thinking. So I appreciate that. All this information is amazing. Just wanted to touch on those things. Thank you.
And thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Jerome, do you have your sound there? Jerome is having
The birthday boy don't have a sound. Come on, birthday boy. A birthday man. I'm sorry, birthday man from Brooklyn.
Jerome, you may have to text your in the chat. You may have to put your question in the chat.
or sometime if you go out and come back in,
Yeah.
you might reset it. While Jerome is working on his sound, anyone else have any comment or questions?
I have one I put in the chat. I wanted to know, thank you, Ms. Myers, for sharing this with us. It's very important, as everybody already stated. Do you have a list of prices? Because you talked about the options you can have, and depending on which options you choose can determine the price. Do you have a list of prices that you can share?
Yes, we do have a general price list, and you definitely can stop by and pick one up, that's open to the public.
Okay, thank you.
I don't physically have that in front of me, but we do have a general price list that we give out to our clients.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you, Barry.
Jerome,
Can you hear me?
So yes, Jerome, we hear you.
Okay. Hi, Pat. How are you? My name is Jerome Hall. Thank you for coming on, sharing with us. This is very powerful. I be forgetting a lot, Pat, so I got my better half over here with me, making notations. But this is very important. I postponed my dinner engagement for this is my birthday night.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you so much. So I have two questions. The first question, you have mentioned if, say, for example, you have a $50,000 life insurance policy and you pass away 2 years after you open that policy. Now, do you know what is the percentage that person would receive if they transpired 2 years after they wrote that policy or had it written?
Well, I think what happens, if you have the $50,000 life insurance policy and you die before that time, you will not get the full proceeds. But I think the premiums that you paid into the policy, you would get something, you would get a portion of that back. How much of it, I'm not sure, but you will get something back. But you're not going to get the entire 50%. The $50,000, I'm sorry.
Right, okay. That's very interesting. And also the second question was, you said if you have that life insurance policy and say, for example, you have you don't, okay, and but you didn't cover the burial at the cemetery. And they want that money, you said they want that money up front.
Right.
So in that scenario, if someone didn't have that money, what happens?
Well, that's why I try to give people awareness, because now there are some funeral homes that might be able to go ahead and take everything from that insurance policy, and
Right.
you have to pay like a fee for them to do that. Okay, but we don't do that. We don't do that at where I am. So what happens, we will let the family know that the cemetery cost is X amount of dollars, and we would need that portion of the money in a certified check or cash to pay the cemetery on the day when we go there.
But you're not answering the question. The question was, if you don't have that money, what happens? So you wouldn't be able to do business with that family, because if they didn't have the money, they would have to go somewhere else.
Well, it depends. Like I said, we can sit down, we can really work with the family. We can negotiate with the family and see how we can do that for them.
Right.
Depending on the size amount of monies that are going out. I mean, if you're spending like a cemetery price of $20,000, that's like $20,000 coming out of my pocket, waiting until your insurance clears. So
Right.
every family is different. We can sit down at the table, we can discuss it, and we'll do the best that we can to help the family along the way.
I see. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the contestability. It's they go and look back on like any misstatements of health and things like that. So they will go in for 2 years and do that. Also, it depends on the policy. If you're getting a final expense, they may not pay everything out. They'll tell you, hey, it's a percentage each year until you meet that mark, depending on the policy. So it all depends on the policy, what you're getting, and things like that.
Ms. Myers, I have a question. Do you see a lot of, in terms of just having insurance, are there a lot of people that come into your office that really doesn't have insurance?
Yeah.
Not a lot. Those that come in that doesn't have insurance, they usually have money set aside to take care of their expenses. I would say like 50-50.
Ms. Myers,
And what they did, and let me just interject this. And the other program that we have is what's called pre-planning.
Yeah.
Families can come in and set up their funeral arrangement with us, plan their funeral ahead of time. And they would start it off with at least $500. And they pay monthly, quarterly, annually, whatever is convenient for them. That's another way of putting monies aside for your burial.
I did that about a year ago. And yeah, so because when I had to lay my aunt to rest, I was executor. It was just so much. And it was such an emotional time. So I said, listen, let me give my kids a gift and have that already paid for and taken care of. So maybe they'll have one last nice thing to say about me before they put me under. But what I found out, which was quite interesting, what motivated me, Puma talking about saving money, that what sold me was that I fixed the price pretty much. So the price that I started with, even if I transition like 10 years later, it's with the price that I went, something like that. I mean, there's a savings benefit. Is that correct? Or they just sold me a bill of sales?
Well, you get the interest on your monies, it should be placed in an interest-bearing account, and usually interest will take care of any increased cost along the way, which we don't have control of. So it usually works out.
Yeah.
Usually works out.
Yeah, that's great. I thought that was such a beautiful point you made, and I'm definitely going to try to follow up with that, is not so much to focus on an obituary, but focus on telling our story. sit around the dinner table and write our story. I think we all should just write our story. It was quite difficult when my mom passed away to gather information about her. And we found out some things. I know I found out something about it that I wish I knew before so I could celebrate it. I didn't know that she migrated from Cuba when she was 15 years old. I mean, my mom was an incredible woman, but if I knew that, I would have given her more flowers. I mean, that how could a 15-year-old come to this country and accomplish the things that she did, which was totally amazing. And I found that after she had gone. But she was very private, but I like that idea of sitting around the dinner table and just having conversations and asking questions, not because I'm writing your obituary. I just want to know about your life. Yeah. Great point. Yes, Phil, your hand up again, or I didn't take it down?
I did not know about the pre-planning. So there's a lot of times where people can't get insurance, and the pre-planning is a way that they can come in and do it that route. So that is very good information. Is there any health screening or anything, or they just come in and say, this is what we want to do?
They just come in and say, this is what they want to do. Like I said, they start the plan off with $500.
Yeah.
So there's no age or health factor,
That's good. Okay.
And as you know, Phil, with insurance, if you don't pay your premiums, your policy lapse, you lose it. At least with pre-planning, if you have a hardship 1 month or whatever, your money is still good and you're still getting your money.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Phil.
Sure.
And one thing that they recommended that I come in every so often and decide if I want everything. Like, for example, if I transition tomorrow, I'm gonna have a different funeral than if I hang around here longer. My aunt was 94 years old, so we didn't make prayer cards. There was hardly anyone to invite. I mean, so her cost went way down. We didn't need that much money. Her husband was deceased, her children wasn't there. So it was a whole different experience with her, as if she had transitioned if she was much younger. Yeah.
That's why I said everybody's funeral is different. The cost is different depending on what you want and how elaborate you want to go.
Yeah. Right.
But it's always good, like I said, that, stop into a funeral home and find out what the cost would be so you can prepare yourself. You got your loved ones, you're leaving behind, you want to have something for them. And I tell folks, listen, I'm a funeral director, I'm in business, but you don't need to put all the monies in the ground. And I know you've heard that before. You got to live after all of this.
Yeah. Anyone else have any comments they want to make? Anything that's going through your mind, any takeaways you want to share? We really appreciate you coming on, Ms. Myers. This has been really, this is a very sensitive topic, and you were able to share with us so eloquently and so in a way that it's easy to listen to. So can you share more, if anyone doesn't have anything else, about just the title of your 2 books and where we can get it and how we can contact you, your contact information, if you could maybe put it into the chat, would be very helpful.
Okay, so my first book, they both are Embracing the Teardrops. And the first one is just simple step-by-step guide and planning an affordable, dignified, memorable funeral. That's the first book. And that's just telling you basically the steps to take when death happens. I mean, it's like if somebody died in the house, I'm telling you exactly what you need to do. Somebody died in the hospital, information we would need on a death certificate. It's the how-to book. That's what the first book is all about, what you need to know. The second book that I've written is basically a planning guide for you. And that's titled Your Exclusive End of Life Planning Guide. That last book came out and it was launched in July. It became Amazon #1 bestseller. And this is the book that I really want everyone to take a hold of. And you start documenting your life story, your financials, your funeral planning, everything you can think of that you want your loved one to know, you will put it in this book. You can get the book, I have my website is embracingtheteardrops.com. Everything is about embracing the teardrops. So embracingtheteardrops.com, you can go to my website and you can purchase the book there. If you don't want to do that, you can simply go to amazon.com and purchase the book there. But if you go to my website, you'll learn a little bit more about me that I didn't give to you in the last 45 minutes. And, and we can kind of go from there. But really, I don't know if you can see it from here, the book. I guess it's right here.
Yeah.
This is the title of the book. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
Okay.
Well,
So, you need to get one for you, your spouse, whomever. Give it out as Christmas gifts, because I think it's a great tool for you to give to your loved one. Like say, I don't know who the gentleman was who said that he tried to get information from his mom, even though they don't want to talk about it, but in the quietness, she may just pick this book up and start jotting down information so that you can have, because it's a hard subject to talk about. It's a very hard subject.
yeah, well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, especially in our community. Many of us got wary of the GoFundMe page and the emergency funds, and we're like, wait a minute, there has to be a better way to navigate the transition. We know it's going to happen. Why don't we be more, on point and not leave such grief for those that we leave behind so they could celebrate our lives?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. It's
You're
a
welcome.
pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right,
Appreciate all of you.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Be safe.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.